The first time I came across a student teacher was a very long time ago. I watched her lesson and I gave her afterwards a very detailed developmental feedback. I thought it was extremely generous and helpful to her. I imagine she'd go home that day thanking her lucky stars that she'd come across me, a creative and successful young teacher at this key moment in her life. But what she actually did was go home and write a letter of complaint about me to her university. This was a barrage of negativity from her point of view. She couldn't be expected to process all that advice, and she'd be perfectly happy if I didn't work with her at all anymore. She was right. I told her far too much, and from her point of view, it seemed extremely negative. It seemed like a barrage of criticism. It was demoralising for her. Probably she knew more about student teaching than I did about mentoring at that point. But the reason I actually remember the story is because it illustrates a key point to me now. And this may be helpful to you when you're thinking about why you don't get on with your mentor and what you're going to do about it. And that point is this huge discrepancy that there was between my intention and her perception of it. Her experience of that feedback was opposite to mine. I thought we were doing something creative and helpful and developmental, and she thought the exact opposite. I see this perception gap often. I go to a school and I watch a feedback. The mentor gives feedback to the trainee. It's developmental, it's friendly, it contains compliments and a few critical observations in an attempt to improve the trainee's practice. The mentor goes out of the door and the trainee turns to me and says, "See, he hates me." Why are we talking about these relationships in such extreme emotional ways? I think that's what we really need to be talking about. So this is a tense and difficult relationship, but why is it so tense? I think one of the reasons is that unusually this is not a symmetrical relationship. In your life, most intense relationships are pretty much balanced. You and your parents, you and your children, you and your life partner, you're pretty much in equilibrium. But you and your mentor is wildly asymmetrical. You're experiencing it at a different level of intensity, possibly, to your mentor. Of course, all the power's on one side. And you must feel at times that you're in some sort of protracted television interview show, and your mentor is in the role of Alan Sugar, who appears once a week, is rude to you, and sets you 2 or 3 impossible tasks. You're not your mentor's top priority, and this may be unusual for you. For example, as a university student, you've been in an institution that exists for you. You are the centre of that university. You are why it's there. When you go into a school, that's no longer the case. For example, the children are much more important than you are in a school. So when your mentor seems brusque and doesn't really say good morning properly to you, I don't think she's being rude. She's probably just busy. Obviously, there are things you can do to head off these difficulties. Be professional. Don't grumble in the staff room. Don't be late. Don't say, "Sorry, I couldn't find the room." Don't say, "Oh, sorry, I left it at home." Dress properly and communicate properly. One of the most important things about building this relationship, and indeed about furthering your development generally, is taking criticism well. Don't be defensive when you think you're being criticised. Don't say, "Oh yeah, but the reason I did that was," when your mentor gives you some feedback. It's irritating, and also it slows down your progress because you're not listening. Responses to criticism can be quite overheated. You know, you get trainees who are very upset by criticism, and I understand that. And they will say, "I'm very passionate about this, I really want to do it," but they're not listening to what's actually being said to them. I call this the X factor response. It's not a professional response. A professional response says, oh right, I see, that was wrong. What can I do about that? How do I make it right? Who do I speak to? So what are you going to do if things do go wrong? Well, I think one thing is you've got to sort out your mental hygiene. Force yourself to see the positives. If you're getting a lesson feedback, sit there with a piece of paper with 2 columns. Tick and cross. Force yourself to look for the positives. There will be some, and if there aren't, ask for them. You've just got to take a fresh look at things. To make this work, you've got to talk to your mentor. You've got to resist the temptation not to talk to your mentor, to keep quiet when things are difficult. For example, if things are going wrong, it's tempting to think, I won't tell him, I'll wait, things will probably get better. After all, he's going to make judgments about me later on. This is absolutely understandable and an entirely fatal approach. For one thing, things will just get worse. For another, he probably already knows. Things will go wrong for you when you're training to be a teacher. They're bound to. You're learning an incredibly complex job in a hostile and challenging environment. Things going wrong is not unprofessional. Not doing anything about them, maybe. The trick is to have this conversation without criticising your mentor. If you say to me, you're too negative, I'm quite likely to reply, no, I'm not. And we're just into a kind of negative spiral that's going to do nobody any good, and certainly you're not going to come well out of it. Instead, try to express in terms of your needs. If a lesson observation seems to be 15 negative points, instead of saying, I can't handle that, try saying instead, you know, what I think I need now, could you help me please by giving me 2 things I've done well in that lesson and 2 development points, and could that be the pattern that we have in future? Because I personally would find that very useful. You're redefining and recasting the mentoring relationship, not through criticism, but through process. And offer to help. A trainee once said to me, when my mentor asks for help, it makes me feel so much more equal in the relationship. Well, why don't you offer to help her, do a bit of research for her from time to time? She might be very pleased when that happens, and you might feel better about the whole thing. So good luck, and remember, these issues can be solved, often much more easily than you think.